you another question. That leads me to another question, and that is, wouldn't that apply to males also?
Absolutely. No, it does.
I was with the same company almost 50 years and started part-time, and I had quite a career and went through a lot of different positions.
Yeah.
And, if I were talking to anybody, I don't care who or what they are, I would want them to feel the same thing that I want through this process. My number one desire is for them to be successful.
Yes.
And I'm not going to tell them what they're. Somebody just asked me today about coaching, and I said, coaching is an interesting field because it's not you're not an advisor. You can't, it's like in church, first children, we teach them.
Right.
We're not teaching as a coach. We're not teaching. Then we tell them as a kid. We teach them as an adolescent. And we trust them as an adult. And right, as adults, so we're trusting them. But we do with questions like as an adolescent. When we teach adolescents, we ask, like, do you like your bedroom messy?
Yes.
Get around real well? Does it help to get around? Do you think you're always going to like messy houses and messy bedrooms, whatever that is? But there's a big difference in coaching and advising, and you've got to let them know that in your heart of hearts, right off the bat. Yeah. I agree with you that there's an old saying that people don't care what you know until they know how much you care.
Absolutely. Yes. And I want to go back to something you said that's really interesting, Wayne and Bruce. Yes, men find the same value that women do. What's interesting, we are biologically different. Now, that's not rocket science, right?
Yes.
But when you look at how you think in the area where you find fight or flight, there is science that tells us that the hyperactivity of the amygdala is very much heightened by women. And that when you have this, it's because of, the expectations, it's things that we believe to be true, right? Men's experiences are very different, but if women have this biological response to stress and tough decisions, they'll automatically go into a decision that they've made in the past. So they'll apply it to the future of this decision. And then we're kind of like, oh, that wasn't the right decision. And now it creates these career stalls where I think the world is much more forgiving, for males so than it is for females. So when females make a bad decision, many times it does create this career stalls and it creates a belief. So there's this capability of changing this biological response is one of the first things that we do is say there really is a difference. The beauty of putting men and women together is they can kind of help leverage that and realize that how you see things isn't the way things really are, whether you're a man or a woman, because you can see things differently.
Excellent. I'll tell you what, Dina, this is holy mackerel. It's awesome.
It's been just really fun. And it's almost like a sigh of relief for women to say, oh, wow, that's kind of why I feel this way. And when you feel like you can be a part of a psychological safe space where you're not judged for bad decisions, by putting people together, there's something very igniting about the possibilities of next strategies and putting yourself there and negotiating what you want, but also being clear about what you want. And men are very clear about what they want. Women, not so much. They're still trying to figure out how to tell you what they want.
It's interesting in the business I'm from. When I started, it was probably 90% men and 10% women. And now it's 90% women and 10% men.
Yeah.
So but the industry I'm in is a direct sales industry.
Mm-hmm.
And which, by the way, years ago was very big around Springfield area.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of, and it's interesting when you're talking about different races, backgrounds, because we have Filipino,
yes,
huge group,
yeah,
Nigerian, and they're totally very different. the way they think, their culture,
Yes.
Persian.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah. But then I see companies that say, oh, we're going to do an ERG group. So I'm going to put the Africans over here. I'm going to put the Filipinos over here. I'm going to put Asians over here. And that's your group, right? But there's nobody cross-pollinating. You can't get people to share their experiences and their beliefs and their great ideas unless you give them a safe space to cross-pollinate, which is what kind of the beauty of diagnostic thinking was. I'm doing a group with J&J right now that has leaders from all over the globe, and they're testing it to see how it's going to impact their leadership capability. And I said, that's the way you're going to cross-pollinate ideas. But you can't do it unless you create.
Yes.
Give people permission to just stay present in the moment so that you can allow yourself to just unbuckle. Because you can't unbuckle. You can't unbuckle from stress.
You know, that's very interesting. Bruce, when this is finished, I need to get her information because
Sure.
I'd like to talk with you about something real quick too about the cross pollination, and we're actually doing some of that. But that what you've given it is to me, you've made the validation.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you've made the validation. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you're welcome.
So again, that's kind of a process thing. You use the word diagnostic a lot, right? That's part of your brand per se, or one of your things. Right. So let's talk about that. What do you mean by that? How does that play out? So tell our listeners and viewers about that.
Yeah, so it's really funny. When I was going through my executive MBA and I was continuing to do the pilot, I had a professor, Dr. Jackson Nickerson. He is an organizational development wizard. He's an engineer that has this other amazing side of him. And I said, I really think you need to come and see what I'm doing, but I have to ask these ladies if it's okay, because you're not part of the group. So I said, but I really want you to come see what I'm doing, because I don't see it in the executive MBA. I don't see it in universities. I don't see what I'm doing here. And so when he came, he and I worked together to kind of come up with diagnostic thinking, because it's that real deep subconscious thinking that people don't feel safe to do that. You don't do it at home with your husband. You certainly aren't going to do it with your peers. You certainly aren't going to do it with your senior leadership. But if you can do it with somebody outside of the good girlfriends, your family, your work, and you can do it with somebody who's not going to judge you for whatever you think, it creates this powerful. That's where we came with the diagnostic, because it really truly is digging, reframing. So is this the right question? Did I get it right, Bruce? Is this right? And Bruce will say, no, that's not right. What is that question? What are we missing here? So we go around, we banter this around for quite a while. Like I said, once we get it right, everybody walks away in the group with their own strategies, because everybody is faced with a similar problem.
What do you mean by get it right?
The right question. No one gets the right question because there's a real deeper question. Many people are solving these corporate, business critical, 10,000 foot problems. We see this problem. This is a problem. But what we're finding is that that's really not the problem. It may be a starting place, but there is layers of critical thinking below, making sure that you have the right problem. And it may be a really small piece of that really large problem, but you've got to start with the right piece. That's the problem in organizations. We go too quickly. We solve a problem. We jump over, whether that's process improvement. It could be team optimization. It could be resolving silos. It could be as simple as, how do you build trust with your teams? Very simple. How do I become a more humble manager when I know I need to get something done? And now you're coming from an autocratic mindset, from a mindset that says, well, Wayne and Bruce, you really matter to me, and I want to know what you think we should be doing to make this a better company. What is it going to take? Nobody asks those questions.
When you're hired by stakeholders or companies, do they kind of tell you, hey, this is what we want you to try to fix with these folks or try to build up in these folks? Or you just do your thing and whatever happens.
No, usually they've got some problem. They're searching for an answer. They're trying to figure out how do they overcome this problem, right? I mean, usually that's where it is, whether it's underperforming team, a merger and acquisition, new managers, new teams. Maybe you've got middle managers that really don't have good capabilities around their management skills. So it just depends. So if I'm doing, specifically leadership training, which is diagnostic thinking, it's a 6-month program where we start with purpose, values, and vision. We go through and we talk about optimizing teams. We talk about how do you deal with bad behavior. We talk about those things. So a piece of that is, one piece is a do it yourself. And then we've got 2 hours of diagnostic thinking every month. So that's kind of where that happens. So with that, it just depends on what senior leaders are looking for. It's funny. I've had so much experience with so many different things. No matter what's happening, I just need to fit the needs of senior leaders. What do you see is happening? But I need to interview the people too underneath, and probably some of your clients to figure out, okay, there's a mismatch probably in here somewhere. And how can you connect those dots?
So what's the average length of engagement with the groups? Is it one time, 3 times, 8 weeks? What's
Great
the kind of
question?
Yeah.
Well, the one, my pilot that I started in 2016 is still together. So I have women that have decided that they want to stay together because they have created such a huge impact in their own careers and their companies that we've all stayed together. I get hired by companies for my 6-month diagnostic thinking program. That's where the sweet spot is for a lot of people. But what I find is that when people are done, these groups are done, they're hungry, they want more. Mm-hmm. What I found is that the senior executives that went through this with IQ via India, when we got done with their program, they stayed together for 1 year. It was supposed to be 6 months, but they wanted to stay together for 1 year. And then they were thinking they could try to do it themselves. And really they couldn't do this process themselves inside the company. They found that there really is an art and a science to doing it. So I said, yeah, there kind of really is. So back to your question, we start with 6 months and then they say, okay, well, what does it look like from there? Do you want more or are you good to go? And if you're good to go, that's great.
And that 6 months is an hour a week for 6 months. What's the average engagement?
So there are 2 lanes. The first lane is a DYI. That first lane, you're going to focus on core values index, which I've put together with Lynn Taylor is the one who devised that, but it tells us who you are at your deepest core level. Okay. From there, the DYIs are looking at, that 1 hour, and I only tell them it's 1 hour. Just give yourself 1 hour a month and you're not taken away from your business critical issues. Now, diagnostic thinking, I require 2 hours of block time. That means phone off, everything's got to be off. You got to be all in, and that's every month. Leadership program is a 3-hour commitment every month. Gotcha. So we do a retrospective survey at the very end to say, okay, what did you change based on what you experienced? So we never start with a front end survey because that's kind of giving away a little bit of, okay, I don't want you to be biased. Oh, I'm going to take this or take that. I want you to step back and say, okay, now tell me, what did you change? What I found is that 100% were much more confident, but over 70% of the women are finding, and men, but mostly women, because that's most of my work, but have found new roles within 9 to 12 months. And that's what's happened over the last 6 years, 70%. And I have corporate America telling me, oh my gosh, this is huge. I go, it really is huge, because we're getting to the real root problem. It's fear. We have to control the fear.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Okay.
And I'm so excited I could run out and climb a tree backwards. This is just amazing stuff.
Thank you.
To help people like this. I mean,
yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved with a lot of consultants that have come into our company, and it's just interesting. Some of what you do, I've been exposed to, but not. You have an element, Dina, that I haven't seen in some really high-paid consultants. That is,
I was going to say,
a human element. That
do
really,
you? So when you have this, so you do like an engagement letter with I got to ask if you can take the fifth. So I did a lot of stuff with Deloitte and other financial services companies, working with partners, principals, and managing directors. Yeah, but it was never in a group. It was always one at a time. And so I'd have an engagement letter. Oh gosh, it was engaged, and it had like a 3-month minimum because in the executive coaching sphere and the life coaching sphere, it's a 3-month minimum. So I'd have this engagement letter that talked about that. So, and I don't want you to give away, but do you have this engagement letter that calls for a 6-month engagement?
Yeah, I do. It's called my offer. Yeah, it's the offer. I tell them this is what you do every month, right? And I'm kind of a coach on call, which is not normal for, I think, a lot of coaches, because people want to kind of control their time. But my experience in my own career, there was times when I was just like, oh crap, I do not know what to do. I don't know what to do. And it may be a 15-minute conversation, but I can control that biological response and say, okay, what's the situation? Where do you want to go? But the most common question I ask, and you'll love this too, probably both of you, especially Bruce, right? What's the truth in how you're thinking?
Yeah.
Because we're never thinking out of the place of truth, because we are so shaded by this stress, this post-pandemic time. And I coached India. India was during pandemic times.
Yes.
I had this group of 36 women. They were all middle managers. They're trying to figure out how to get trying to get these women to step up. They were so afraid, and they were so fearful of making a bad decision, and they were just all paralyzed. So once you open up the gate and you give them clear strategies, but accountability, and you got to come back the next month, and Wayne, you got to tell us what happened. And they're like, oh my gosh, you won't believe what happened. And I'm like, oh, that's great. You can just feel this synergy, and just honestly, it's just, you feel like you're being loved on, even when things are really crappy, because it is crappy. It feels crappy.